Title of the lecture is Pharynx, Esophagus and Stomach. The main questions. Pharynx. This picture demonstrates the entrance from the oral cavity to the pharynx. The crossing of respiratory and digestive pathways take place here. Pharynx consists of three parts: nasal, oral, and laryngeal part. And food from the oral cavity after the swallowing enter to the oral part and then into esophagus. Oral and laryngeal part lining by stratified squamous non-keratinized epithelium. Pharynx is a typical tubular line organ and consists of three membranes: inner mucous membrane, middle muscle membrane, consists of striated skeletal muscle tissue, and outer adventitial connective tissue. Esophagus, its typical tubular organ, 30 centimeters long, which connecting pharynx and stomach. It consists of three membranes: the inner mucous membrane. It have large longitudinal folds. Middle muscle membrane. It consists of two layers: inner circular and outer longitudinal, and it in the upper part consists of skeletal muscle tissue. In the down part, before the entrance into the stomach, it consists of smooth muscle tissue, and in the middle it consists both of skeletal and smooth muscle tissue. Outer membrane, adventitial, before diaphragm and mediastinum, and outer diaphragm in abdomen cavity. It covered by serous membrane, visceral peritoneum, as other organs situated in abdomen cavity. This picture demonstrates the structure of esophagus wall under microscope. You can see three membranes: inner mucous membrane near the lumen of esophagus, middle muscle membrane consists of two layers of striated muscle tissue. In this case, you see the symplasms, skeletal muscle fibers in longitudinal and transverse section. So you can suggest that the piece of esophagus was taken from the anterior part of esophagus. And outer membrane is adventitial. So mucous membrane consists of 4 layers. The inner, stratified squamous epithelium, it's surface epithelium. It's non-keratinized, of course. The second underlying layer is lamina propria. It consists of loose fibrous connective tissue and tubular cardiac glands located here, but only in upper region near the larynx and near the entrance into the stomach. Third layer is lamina muscularis, consists of smooth muscle cells, quite thick layer, and you can see the bundles, longitudinal bundles of smooth muscle cells. This muscle cells contraction provide the formation of longitudinal folds. If the esophagus is empty, when the piece of food going through, this lamina muscularis relaxed and folds disappeared, and the food can easily go through the esophagus into the stomach. Submucosa is loose connective tissue. There's a lot of blood vessels and proper glands located here. It had the structure typical for mucous secretion glands. And this mucous secret release through the ducts into the inner surface of esophagus. It's cover the mucous membrane. It protect it from crude food and lubricate the surface for better movement of food. Stomach, it's extension of digestive tube. Its volume about 2.5 liters. Here food accumulated and digested by gastric juice. And this organ carry out many functions. You will study during the physiology course in details. This picture demonstrates the transition of the esophagus to the stomach. And under the microscope you can see that all membranes and layers of esophagus continued into the same membranes and layers of the stomach. And you can see as stratified squamous non-keratinized epithelium of esophagus transit into the simple columnar secretory epithelium of the cardiac part of the stomach. You can see that gastric pits appeared and cardiac gastric glands and lamina propria appeared. In this picture you can see the outer serous membrane, 4 anatomical parts of the stomach: cardial part, fundus, corpus, and pylorus. Muscle membrane consists of 3 layers of smooth muscle cells. Inner circular layer became much thicker and composed the sphincter, pyloric sphincter. When the muscle contract, it closes, then it relax. The portion of digested food can pass the sphincter from stomach into duodenum. This is inner mucous membrane of the stomach, and again you see the cardia, fundus, corpus of body, and pylorus. There are longitudinal folds or ruga. You can see without microscope. And here you can see one fold under microscope. All layers of mucous membrane participate in fold formation. You see surface epithelium, lamina propria with glands, lamina muscularis. When it contract, the fold appeared, and lamina submucosa. It consists of loose connective tissue, quite thick, these numerous blood vessels, and mucous membrane like sliding on this submucosa. Surface epithelium invaginate the lamina propria and produce gastric pits. There are up to 3 millions of gastric pits, and you can see them under scan electron microscope. And 3 layers of muscle membrane and serous membrane. The surface epithelium is simple columnar secretory epithelium. Surface mucous cells produce mucus. It's glycoproteins which produce both in rough and smooth endoplasmic reticulum, accumulated in Golgi, and this mucous granulus in apical portion of cell. Then it's secreted into the lumen, and this layer of mucus, half of millimeter thick, cover the surface of mucous membrane, and it protect the stomach wall from self-digestion by gastric juice. Lamina propria locate the stomach glands. These are simple tubular glands of 3 types. Proper glands located in fundus and corpus of the stomach. Cardiac glands located in cardiac part, and pyloric gland in pylorus. Proper gastric glands are the main glands which occupy both fundus and corpus. They are quite long and consist of 4 parts: isthmus, cervix, body and fundus. Body and fundus, like secretory portion, they produce the gastric juice component, and second isthmus like duct, which release the secret into the gastric pit and into the lumen, and up to 10 gastric glands enter one gastric pit. So these glands densely packaged in lamina propria. They're half of millimeter long, and there are up to 35 millions of them in the stomach. There are several types of cells in proper glands. First one is chief cells. They are basophilic, and then gematoxylin as in staining preparation. They're violet in color because there are a lot of RNA, ribosomes, and cytoplasm located on the surface of rough endoplasmic reticulum canals. They produce the protein for export. Protein called pepsinogen. It accumulated in Zimatkin granulars in apical portion of cells, and it released into the lumen of gland and into the lumen of stomach, where in acid medium it converted to proteolytic enzyme pepsin, which destroy the proteins of food into small peptides. And there are the mitochondria and Golgi complex. But main organelle, the most typical, is rough endoplasmic reticulum. Actinic or parietal cells. Actinic because they're oxyphilic. They stain by acid dyes into the pink or red color because of a lot of mitochondria in cytoplasm of these cells. Parietal, the name because their location outside parietally concerning the chief cells. Actinic cells produce protons, chloride ions. They release into the intracellular canaliculi. They contain a lot of microvilli, and these ions go into the intercellular canaliculi and to release into the lumen of gland and then into the lumen of stomach. There from protons and chloride ions produce the hydrochloric acid, which provides the acid medium necessary for activation of pepsinogen into pepsin for digestion of proteins. In addition, parietal cells produce intrinsic anti-anemic factor of Castle, is glycoprotein, which bind for absorption of vitamin B12 in intestine, and vitamin B12 necessary for production of erythrocytes in red bone marrow. Mucous accessory cells or mucocytes located in the neck of proper glands, then they produce the mucous secretion, and they're visible at the histochemical preparations for glycoproteins like epithelium cells. So these accessory cells help to protect mucous membrane and stomach wall from aggressive action of gastric juice. They protect the stomach wall from self-digestion by gastric juice. Endocrine cells, or argentaffin, because they stain by cellular impregnation. These endocrine cells belong to diffuse part of endocrine cells. They accumulated in the secretory granulars, mostly in basal part of cells. These cells, apical portions, don't reach the lumen of glands, and they release the secret not into the lumen but through the basal membrane into the blood of surrounding blood capillaries. And these hormones regulate, first of all, the activity of gastric glands or the blood circulation in stomach mucosa and movement of the stomach. Mucous neck cells and undifferentiated neck cells. They are very important cells which consist of stem, proliferating, undifferentiating Campbell cells. They dividing by mitosis, and young cells sliding on the basal membrane in two directions. If they go into the surface, they replace the surface epithelium. During 5-7 days, it completely replaced. Or they slide in on the basal membrane to the body and bottom of glands and replace the aging, old, defected and died chief parietal, accessory and endocrine cells of the stomach glands. They live about 5-6 weeks and replace for the new one. This is a microphotogram of the fundus of stomach, photo from your histological preparation. You see the mucous and muscle membrane, gastric pits and proper glands, lamina muscularis and submucosa. And this is demonstrational preparation, demonstrating glycoproteins of a mucous membrane. You can see the mucous layer and surface epitheliocytes and neck and accessory mucous cells, and no staining in the body and fundus of proper glands. So these mucus protect the stomach wall from self-digestion. And these are proper glands at high magnification. In the center located the chief cells, basophilic, violet in color, and the periphery located the parietal actinic cells. They're orange in color, like vesicles. This is a fundus and corpus mucosa, these proper glands, and cardiac part, this deeper gastric pits and shorter gastric cardiac glands. These contain mostly mucous secreting cells and endocrine cells, and few parietal cells, no chief cells. In Pylorus, the deepest gastric pits and shortest glands, pyloric glands. They contain no parietal or chief cells, only mucous secreting and endocrine. This slide demonstrates the location of pyloric glands, pyloric part of the stomach, at low magnification, mucous membrane, and very thick muscle membrane. And in this picture you can see the very deep gastric pits and very short pyloric glands consist of mucous, typical mucous secreting cells. Their cytoplasm filled in by mucous secrete, and nuclei are flat and rod shape. And you can see here the submucous and mesenteric autonomic nerve ganglia, numerous blood vessels. This is a microphotogram of pylorus wall, deep gastric pits and short mucous secreting pyloric glands, muscular layer, submucous layer. This is histochemical preparation, specific staining for glycoproteins in surface epithelium and glands. So I describe you the stomach structure from the organ, tissue to the cellular and subcellular level.